This time we'll call to order the February 10th, 2015 special meeting of the Yukon, Oklahoma City Council. If you would call the roll, please.
Smith.
Here.
McCarron.
Here.
Alberts.
Here.
Russell. Here. Yonda.
Here.
Item 1A is to consider and approve resolution number YMA 2015-02. Yes, sir. Recess as Yukon City Council. At this time, we will recess as a Yukon City Council, reconvene as a Yukon Municipal Authority. Item 1A is to consider and approve resolution number YMA 2015-02, a resolution authorizing the Yukon Municipal Authority, the authority, to issue its sales tax revenue note, Series 2015A, in the aggregate principal amount of $9,520,000. The 2015A note, waiving competitive bidding and authorizing the 2015A note to be sold at a price of par by negotiating sale within the limits provided by Title 60 Oklahoma Statute, Section 176, authorizing and approving documents, procedures, and payments related to issuance of the 2015A note, providing that the trust indenture shall be subject to the provisions of the 2015A note, authorizing and directing the execution of the 2015A note and other documents relating to the transaction, including professional services agreements and containing other provisions relating thereto. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Do we have any discussion? Do we have any discussion? Would you like to address the council?
Mayor, members of the council, John Michael Williams. There's been a lot of activity since we were with you last Tuesday evening, and it may make sense to for us to describe all that's gone on with respect to each of these items. Perhaps it even makes sense to have item 2A before you also, because I think it makes more sense to discuss the two of them together with your permission. So that's what we propose to do. Toward that end, we're in a very, the market has a mind of its own. The market for money has a mind of its own. And there have been some good things that have happened to us in the market. There are some things that are not resolved yet that have occurred based on what the market is doing. Part of what's occurring is that other issuers have realized there's an opportunity to do the same thing we're doing. And as a result, with a lot of different prospective borrowers trying to work through the credit analysis for their respective deals, only so many can go through it at one time. So I think what makes the most sense to share the details with you is to turn this over to Chris Gander and Alan Brooks, both of whom have some exquisite relationships with entities that are prospective lenders. So I'll turn it over to each of you.
So a quick summary is we had the two notes, the 2000A and the 2000B. We went out to financial institutions. The good news is, and tell me, let's do some precursor before this, but to get to where the rubber meets the road. The 2000B, the bank qualified, we have a bid in hand, a commitment at 1.6%. We'd come, projected that at 1.8%, so we're 20 basis points below what we projected on that. On the 2000A note, we don't have a commitment yet. We're still working through it. We have a couple banks. It's a little bit larger, and they just need some more time. And so therefore, we're here today with a recommendation to give us parameters to proceed in the following week once we get indication from these other banks. The first bank on the 2015B, they are most competitive when it's a bank qualified, and so they didn't look to do the 2015A, and that was by design because they thought they'd be able to give us a better rate, which obviously they did at the 1.6%, so we're very happy about that. So back to the 2015A and the parameters, we still think we're inside where we were the other night at 245 is what is the rate we shown, and we still think we're there, but we're getting close, and we'd hate for rates to continue to move up and then be chasing it, not having enough of an authorization. So we just kind of played with some numbers, and this is like in the past when you do bond issues, we don't know what the rate's going to be. We go out, we sell the bonds, and then we come back, so we always have a parameter authorization. So we're looking for a parameter authorization of 2.75%. That gives us a little bit of room in case the rates continue to move before we can get a commitment from these banks. At 2.75%, I try to keep things as simple as I can. The effect is $95,438 more in interest versus what we showed you the other night. We hope that doesn't happen, but if it comes in at the very top of our authorization tonight, that's the net effect to the city. So,
I'm sorry, even so, that, let's say, worst-case scenario, we end up at the 2.75, that's still approximately half of the current.
yeah,
Right
you're
on the
still
bottom.
half the current, your net, if the 3 million, you're still very close. You're basically 100,000 less than you were before. So your numbers are very close considering you're saving, if you were saving 200,000 and we're gonna lose 100,000, that's a big deal. But when you've got approximately 3 million and you may go down 100,000, it's kind of insignificant, but it gives us room, because we'd hate to squeeze ourselves, rates move up and we're 5 basis points away, well, then we gotta schedule another meeting, come back again, and it's just, this is normal procedure in bond issues. This is just kind of the normal way it's done. With notes, we normally like to come back and say, here's the rate, firm, like we're doing with the 2015B. With the 2015A, we've just gotta give them a little bit more time. And as John started, what happened is their timelines, when we call them, it's like, we're backed up. You're not the only one, pushing us to get this thing done. There's a lot of people trying to lock in these rates, and so we need a little extra time. So we're hoping, certainly by this time next week, we'll have a firm rate inside the parameters.
I think, at this point, I know you'd like to describe item 1A and 2A to us at the same time, but I think it's clear that in order for us to take any action on 1A, we have to have a modified motion
Alan, you
to include that perimeter.
Well, the resolution that you have in front of you, the authorizing resolution for the A series of bonds, authorizes your motion would be to approve that resolution that already includes an interest rate of not to exceed the 2.75%.
It's already in the resolution you handed out to us.
Yes, sir. But before we got into that resolution, we wanted to make sure that you kind of understood where we were. I mean, when-
Alan, as a point of reference, that is on page 2, third line from the bottom,
Thank you.
toward the end of the sentence.
Again, when the summary that we passed out last time had the bank qualified, the B rate at 1.8%. We're ready to lock that in today at 1.6. So we're going to save more on the B note. The A note, the non-bank qualified note, we had projected 2.45. We're asking you to authorize it at 2.75. If based on one of the banks we're dealing with, if they had their credit approval in place based on yesterday's rate, we would have still been under that 2.45% yesterday, even though rates have gone up about 20 basis points, or 0.2% over the last week. Having said that, thinking a week, possibly 10 days down the road, we just want that cushion. So again, as Chris very accurately
You
described,
said that is already in our paperwork on page.
Yes. Page 2, to the far right, third line up.
let's just,
Okay.
If you don't mind, let me take a motion and just read that sentence for everybody. It says, "The 2015A note shall bear interest at the fixed rate of not to exceed 2.75 per annum, and the principal installments on the 2015A note shall be paid as set forth on Schedule A here too." So it clearly does specify the ceiling of 2.75.
same principal amount we've been talking about all along. The chairman or vice chairman, once we get that rate in hand, is authorized in the very next sentence to sign what we call a certificate of determination that actually approves the rate as long as it's within that 2.75 parameter. And again, John's firm, our firm, Chris's firm, we're all sitting on your side of the table trying to negotiate the best possible rate we can with the plurality of banks that we're talking to. I mean, essentially what we've told the banks at this point is whoever shows up with the most competitive rate the quickest is the one that Chris, as your financial advisor, will examine he'll get with Grayson and get with either the mayor or vice mayor and make a recommendation in terms of, should we accept this? We've got somebody else that's maybe just a day away. Should we wait? What are rates doing? Again, rates, because of the influx into the market, the demand for dollars, I mean, a combination of that and just rates ticking up a little bit, that's kind of what has bottlenecked the process that wouldn't normally. So that's it in a nutshell. Go
I have
ahead.
a quick question. Is there a reasonable time frame that you think we're within?
We think a week to 10 days, all right? I would like to think it's going to be quicker than that. I'll tell you what we did. One of the banks that we're talking to, Chris and I got on the phone yesterday. John and I talked yesterday afternoon. Chris and I guess I actually was on the phone, ran her down, but we essentially said, okay, where are you? If you're going to give us a rate today on the B note, they were going to bid on both, the bank we're talking to. If you gave us a rate on the B note today, what would it be? Well, she said, one, I can't give you a rate. I said, I understand, but if you could. Well, the rate that she would have given us yesterday was higher than the rate by 20 basis points that we're asking you to approve on the B note today. So I said, make your job easier. You've already lost the B note. We're not going to, we're recommending based on where interest rates are, we're going to take the B note with Branch Bank and Trust, okay? The rate we have locked in. Now you can focus your energies on getting us a bid on the A note. And she said, well, more than that, I can tell my underwriters I've already lost the B note because you guys are moving so slow. So we've kind of built a fire under that particular issue or lender, and I think that's going to help our process. It's negotiations. But hopefully within a week, maybe sooner. She carved a couple of days off since last night, just based on that conversation. So I think it's in the authority's best interest to try to lock the rate up sooner versus later.
Do we have any further discussion? We have a motion and a second on item 1A. No further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Yonda,
Yes.
McCarron,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Alberts.
Yes.
Item 2A is to consider and approve resolution number YMA 2015-03, a resolution authorizing the Yukon Municipal Authority, the authority to issue its sales tax revenue note, Series 2015B, in the aggregate principal amount of $5,805,000, the 2015B note, waiving competitive bidding and authorizing the 2015B note to be sold at a price par by negotiating the sale within the limits provided by Title 60, Oklahoma Statute, Section 176, authorizing and approving documents, procedures, payments related to issuance of the 2015B note, providing that the trust indenture shall be subject to provisions of the 2015B note, authorizing and directing the execution of the 2015B note and other documents relating to the transaction, including professional services agreements and containing other provisions relating thereto. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. You have some additional information you'd like to
Well,
share?
I'd just like to point out on page 2 of the B resolution, or B authority resolution, you'll note the interest rate is established fixed at 1.60%. That's in section 1, about 4 lines from the bottom of the page. And then the note under section 2, it carries over to the top of the page 3, is being awarded to Branch Bank and Trust Company in Charlotte, North Carolina. One of the issues that, a recommendation from your financial advisor, they've given us 2 redemption options. Typically, these type of transactions are non-prepayable, okay? On the B note, they've given us an option to make the transaction prepayable with no premium halfway through the term of the loan, or 2, make it prepayable on any payment date with a 1% premium throughout the term of the loan. The recommendation of your financial advisor is that we would take the halfway through the term, no prepayment penalty on this transaction. Again, this is an unusual feature that this particular bank provides. The A note that we're talking about is probably going to be non-prepayable, all right?
Can you tell me where in the document you provided us it states that?
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't say that. That would just, I would make that approving the resolution with a motion or part of the motion or recommendation being at a either halfway through the term, prepayable, no penalty, or if you opt for the anytime call at a 1% premium.
But neither option is in the
No, sir.
documents we have in front of us.
That is correct. That can just be in the minutes, and the documents will reflect that as drafted.
And the documents that will carry this out, that'll be the document signed by the chairman, Mayor, that you'll be signing, and there are any number of other provisions that the chairman signs off on as we get to the end of this transaction, which is exactly how we've done all other Yukon bond issues. So I think this was more informational, that you had a choice, and if you had a preference one way or the other, the members of your council are telling you, as the chairman, that's what they want.
Very good. Do we have any further discussion?
I suggest we follow our financial advisor's advice.
Sounds like a good recommendation. I guess we'll determine that with a vote as soon as Mr. Shivers calls roll.
Smith,
Yes.
Alberts.
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Yonda,
Yes.
McCarron.
Yes.
This time we'll adjourn as YMA and reconvene as the Yukon City Council. Item 1 is to consider and approve resolution number 2015-01, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Yukon, Oklahoma, the city, and approving the incurrence of indebtedness by the Yukon Municipal Authority, the authority issuing its sales tax revenue note series 2015A in the aggregate principal amount of $9,520,000. That's the 2015A note, waiving competitive bidding and authorizing a 2015A note to be sold at a price of par value by negotiated sale within the limits provided by Title 60 Oklahoma Statute Section 176, authorizing and approving a sales tax agreement providing security for the 2015A note, providing that all the trust indentures shall be subject to provisions of the 2015 note, authorizing and directing the execution of documents and procedures related to issuance of the 2015 note and containing other provisions relating thereto. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion without being redundant? Do we have any discussion? Having none, call the roll, please.
Russell,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Alberts.
Yes.
McCarron,
Yes.
Yonda.
Yes.
Item 2 is to consider and approve resolution number 2015-02, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Yukon, Oklahoma, approving the incurrence of indebtedness by the Yukon Municipal Authority, issuing its sales tax revenue note, Series 2015B, in the aggregate principal amount of $5,805,000, waiving competitive bidding and authorizing its 2015 note to be sold at a price of par value by negotiated sale within the limits provided by Title 60 Oklahoma Statute Section 176, authorizing and approving a sales tax agreement providing security for the 2015B note, providing that the trust indenture shall be subject to provisions of the 2015B note, authorizing direction and execution of documents and procedures related to the issuance of the 2015B note and containing other provisions relating thereto. Do we have a motion?
So move. Second.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion? Any discussion? Having none, call the roll, please.
Alberts.
Yes.
McCarron,
Yes.
Yonda,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. Item 3 is consider and approve ordinance number 1310, an ordinance amending Section 2, 137B of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Yukon by determining that certain obligations, including the Yukon Municipal Authority Sales Tax Revenue Note, Series 2015A, in the aggregate principal amount of $9,520,000, and the Yukon Municipal Authority Sales Tax Revenue Note, Series 2015B, in the aggregate principal amount of $5,805,000, do not exceed debt limitations, repealing all conflicting ordinance provisions, and declaring an emergency.
This one needs to be read in full.
Thank you.
Would someone like to read it?
We had counted on you, John.
Okay, very well. Well, be it ordained by the Council of the City of Yukon, Oklahoma, Section 1, the Code of Ordinances of the City of Yukon is hereby amended by amending the existing language of Section 2-137B, which new Section 2-137B is set out in its entirety below, to wit, the following bonds and indebtednesses are conclusively determined to be within and not to exceed the limitations of Section 2, 137A, or any debt limitations of the Code of Ordinances or the Charter of the city, and any conflicting provisions of the Code of Ordinances of the city are modified to the extent necessary to fully validate the following. 1. Yukon Municipal Authority Sales Tax and Utility System Revenue and Refunding Bond Series 2012 in the aggregate principal amount of $6,500,000. Number 2, Yukon Municipal Authority Sales Tax and Utility System Revenue and Refunding Bond Series 2013 in the aggregate principal amount of $8,500,000. Number 3, Yukon Municipal Authority 2014 Revenue Note in the aggregate principal amount of $4,800,000. Number 4, Yukon Municipal Authority Sales Tax Revenue Note Series 2015A in the aggregate principal amount of $9,520,000. That's one of the notes that you've authorized today. Item 4, Yukon Municipal Authority Sales Tax Revenue Note Series 2015B in the aggregate principal amount of $5,805,000, and that's the other note that you authorized today. Section 2, repealer all provisions of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Nichols Hills, City of Yukon, which are inconsistent with the foregoing. It says Yukon, which are inconsistent with the foregoing, are hereby repealed to the extent of such conflict, it being intended that the foregoing ordinance shall supersede and modify any conflicting provisions contained in the Code of Ordinances of the City of Yukon. Section 3, emergency, where it is necessary for the immediate preservation of peace, health, and safety of the citizens and residents of the City of Yukon, Oklahoma, that the foregoing ordinance be enacted and the provisions of this ordinance become effective immediately. An emergency is hereby declared to exist, and this ordinance shall be in full force and effect immediately from and after its passage and approval as provided by law.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion?
We don't have.
We don't have a motion and a second.
need a motion.
We'd like a motion.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Now we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Having none, call the roll, please.
McCarron.
Yes.
Russell.
Yes.
Alberts.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Yonda.
Yes.
Item 3A is to consider approving the emergency clause of ordinance number 1310.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Do we have any discussion? Do we have any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Russell.
Yes.
Yonda.
Yes.
McCarron.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Alberts.
Yes.
This time we stand adjourned. Oh, whoa, whoa.
Yeah,
You were quick. You got in under the wire.
Yeah, I did, well, go ahead with John, maybe you're gonna say what I think.
There's a little bit of additional information that's been handed out to you that may be useful for
We
right.
handed out a single piece of paper that had some bullet points on it. I mean, I just didn't want you to leave here and start reading it. God, they didn't talk about that. What does this mean? This is the analysis that we went through as we kind of talked about where should we establish that not to exceed interest rate on the A piece. Again, first line, original assumption 245 and a 1.8. Again, we got a 1.6 instead of a 1.8. That 245 could jump to 253, and we would end up in exactly the same place that we discussed with you last week. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, in terms of savings and payment levels. If we hit the 275, that's the next set of information, your aggregate payments are gonna stay basically where they are today, pre-refunding. In other words, your payments aren't gonna drop by 10,000 a year, they stay at about the same level. Your gross savings, instead of being the 2.966 million we projected, the gross savings would be 2.87 million. Okay, a slight drop there. And then we looked at, just from a sensitivity standpoint, we looked at what would happen if that rate on the bank qualified deal, which you haven't authorized, went to 3%. What would that do? That means that your aggregate payments would go up by about 25,000 a year over what you're paying currently, but you'd still enjoy gross savings of about 2.76 million. And then again, we ran it again at 3.14, 40,000 a year increase, gross savings of 270. Our assumption is that we're gonna stay under that 2.75, and we've had our last meeting, okay? But if things go haywire on us, these are the kind of things that we looked at. And again, if over the course of the next week while we're waiting for credit approval, market conditions continue to move on us. But more than anything, I just wanted you to understand, if you were looking after the meeting, what was this piece of paper? Why did you give it to us? The parameter approval we did was the 2.75, and those are the consequences of that. So, just FYI.
I did have one other thing. Did we have another, I didn't understand whether or not we confirmed the judgment. John said something about I recommend that we go with the judgment as to whether or not you guys choose the one or the other. Do we need, does that just, it's in the record?
Yeah, we're good on the record
We
for
don't,
that.
we
We don't need a
that's-
separate vote.
Yeah, that's my question. We don't
No,
need a
sir.
separate, okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Do you have any closing remarks? I was gonna wait until I found out if you had any closing remarks. We stand adjourned.